Theo was the kind of kid who could turn every normal day into absolute chaos. He would trick other kids into doing his homework by bribing them with video games. Instead of using the front door like a normal person, he climbed pipes and sneaked into his room through the window. One afternoon, Theo walked onto the rooftop eating a banana. Without thinking, he tossed the banana peel over the edge, but before it could hit the ground, a strange portal suddenly opened in midair, and the peel vanished. Theo froze. There was no sound, no impact, nothing. He leaned over the roof to check below. The banana peel was gone. Now curious, Theo grabbed one of his roller skates and dropped it over the edge. Again, the portal appeared, and the skate disappeared into thin air. Theo's eyes widened. This time he threw a rock. Same result, gone. Theo immediately ran to tell his older brother Oscar. The two brothers lived with their grandmother because their parents were gone, but Oscar wasn't interested in Theo's nonsense right now. He was furious. Theo had ripped pages out of their mother's research books and turned them into paper rockets. Theo tried explaining that he had discovered a time portal, but Oscar thought he was joking, because for Oscar, time portals were personal. Their mother had mysteriously disappeared years ago. Theo believed she abandoned them and ran away, but Oscar refused to believe that. To him, their mother was a brilliant scientist, someone obsessed with finding portals through time. Oscar believed she was still alive somewhere, trapped in another timeline, and ever since she vanished, he had dedicated his life to understanding her research and bringing her back. The argument between the brothers quickly got worse. Luckily, their grandmother interrupted them and called them downstairs for food. In front of her, both boys stayed quiet, but the second she left, the fight exploded again. Oscar angrily insulted Theo, and in a moment of rage, Theo grabbed Oscar's beloved pet turtle and threw it into the portal. The room went silent. Oscar panicked. He searched everywhere for his turtle, under beds, inside cabinets, outside the house, everywhere. When he couldn't find it, he even printed missing posters. That turtle meant everything to him, and for the first time, Theo realized he had gone too far. Feeling guilty, he decided to fix his mistake himself. So Theo jumped into the portal. The moment he crossed through, he landed in a strange place filled with every object he had thrown inside before. The banana peel, the roller skate, the rocks, and finally, the turtle. Theo grabbed the turtle and returned home through the portal. Quietly, he placed it back where it belonged and went to sleep without saying a word. But the next morning, something impossible happened. Theo woke up and looked around the house. Everything felt different. Then Oscar walked into the room, except Oscar was old, much older. Theo stared at him in shock. Overnight, Oscar had become an adult because Theo hadn't just traveled through a portal, he had traveled through time. From 1990 to the year 2022. Now grown up, Oscar had become a physics professor. That same morning, Oscar visited a local store owned by a man named David. A little later, a woman named Elena arrived there too. David had secretly loved Elena since childhood, but never had the courage to tell her. Elena was divorced now, with 2 children, and even after all these years, Oscar still had feelings for her. She also worked at his university as an English professor. Back at home, Theo wandered around confused. He picked up the turtle and walked toward his grandmother, but now, she was extremely old. So old, she didn't even recognize him. When Oscar finally saw Theo standing there alive and unchanged, the shock nearly made him faint. After recovering, Oscar stared at him with trembling eyes. "Theo, is that really you?" Theo looked equally confused. "How do you know my name? And who are you?" Oscar smiled emotionally. "I'm your brother." Theo blinked. "How did you become this old in one day?" After a long conversation, the truth became clear. Theo had somehow traveled from 1990 directly into 2022. They talked about the day before Theo disappeared, about their fight, about the pages Theo tore from their mother's research. Theo even showed Oscar an old photo of their mother wearing a red dress, but Theo didn't care about any of that right now. He wanted to go home, back to 1990. He was terrified their grandmother would yell at him for disappearing too long. So Theo rushed back to the rooftop and tried reopening the portal by throwing another rock. But this time, nothing happened. The rock simply hit the ground. The portal was gone. Theo panicked. "How can a portal just disappear?" Oscar calmly explained, "Time travel doesn't work that simply. The portal that brought you here isn't guaranteed to take you back." That meant only one thing. They needed to find another portal, one capable of sending Theo from 2022 back to 1990. While searching for answers, Oscar took Theo to meet one of his senior professors. Oscar explained everything about the strange portal, but the professor simply laughed. He told them that science and technology had advanced a lot by 2022, but time portals were impossible. school. Disappointed, both brothers left. As they walked through the modern city, Theo was amazed by everything around him. Cars looked different, buildings were huge, technology was everywhere. Then Theo noticed Oscar's smartphone. Curiously, he asked, "What is this thing?" Oscar smiled slightly. "It's a phone." Theo looked confused. "But where do you rotate the numbers?" Oscar laughed. "You don't need to anymore, and there are no wires either." Theo looked even more shocked. Oscar quickly reminded him, "Focus, Theo. Right now we need to find a portal. Don't you want to go back home?" Suddenly, Theo remembered something important. He told Oscar that while tearing pages from their mother's research papers, he had found a handwritten list hidden inside. Just to annoy Oscar, Theo had hidden that list inside a dictionary. Oscar immediately realized the list might contain clues about the portals, so both brothers asked Grandma about the dictionary. Grandma casually told them she had given it away to David years ago. The next morning, Oscar got ready to visit David's store. Before leaving, he warned Theo strictly, "Stay inside the house. Don't go anywhere." Theo nodded innocently, but the second Oscar left, Theo sneaked outside. Soon, he wandered into a gigantic shopping mall, and the moment Theo saw all the modern gadgets around him, his mind was blown. Everything looked futuristic to him, but what shocked him the most was a VR headset. Theo excitedly tried it on. Inside the game, he became so immersed that he accidentally smashed the expensive equipment. Moments later, Oscar was called to the mall, and unfortunately, he had to pay for all the damage. Outside the store, Oscar scolded Theo angrily for not listening. Afterward, both brothers finally headed toward David's department store to search for the dictionary. David told them the dictionary was at his house. Just then, Alina arrived there too. Theo stared at her in complete shock. He couldn't believe how beautiful Alina had become after growing up. Alina looked confused and asked, "Who is this kid? And how does he know my name?" Oscar quickly lied. "He's my cousin's son." Trying to change the topic, Oscar awkwardly moved the conversation forward. Then Alina invited both brothers to her home. When they arrived, Alina's son and daughter were busy playing video games. Theo was instantly fascinated. The games looked unbelievably advanced compared to 1990. Soon, Theo started playing with Alina's son Nathan. Meanwhile, Oscar finally found the hidden list inside the dictionary. Excited, he told Theo it was time to leave, but Theo was having too much fun playing games. Alina smiled and said, "Let him stay a little longer. I'll drop him home myself later." However, while gaming together, Alina's children started teasing Theo because he had absolutely no idea how modern games worked. To make things even worse, they even used Alexa to check the time, and Theo couldn't believe people now asked machines for the time instead of watches. Later that night, Theo and Oscar began studying the mysterious list together. They climbed onto the rooftop again. Oscar explained that the list contained coordinates for different possible portal locations, so they started testing every location by throwing objects into the air, but nothing worked. No portals appeared. Oscar assumed he had made mistakes in his calculations, so he started solving the equations all over again. During this time, Theo asked something personal. "Why do you always stay alone? And why haven't you ever told Alina how you feel about her?" Oscar kept working while answering quietly. "Even though Alina is divorced now, I still don't think things could ever work between us." Without Oscar knowing, Theo secretly picked up Oscar's phone, and using it, he invited David, Alina, and her children over for dinner. The next evening, the doorbell rang. Oscar opened the door and froze in shock seeing everyone standing outside. Theo grinned proudly. "I invited them." Oscar instantly realized Theo was behind all this. But surprisingly, the evening turned out wonderful. The next day, Alina took Theo shopping to buy him some new clothes. Inside the trial room, Theo kept doing funny football commentary in a dramatic voice, just like he used to do as a kid. The moment Alina heard that, she froze. That strange habit, that exact style of commentary, there was only one person who used to do that, and then she realized the truth. Alina stepped closer and hugged him tightly. Then she asked softly, "How is this possible? You disappeared years ago, so why haven't you grown older?" Theo finally told her everything. About the portal, about jumping from 1990 to 2022, about meeting the older Oscar. Alina could hardly believe what she was hearing. To confirm the truth, Alina confronted Oscar. Oscar silently picked up a rock and threw it from the rooftop. This time, instead of disappearing, the rock bounced back upward unnaturally, and that confirmed it. The portal existed. Oscar then explained something important. There are 3 different kinds of portals. The first type allows direct travel between timelines. The second type is unstable. It can throw you into any random time period. And the third type is the most dangerous, because once you enter it, you can never come back out. Theo had unknowingly used the first type of portal to reach 2022. Now they needed to locate another stable portal that could safely send him back to 1990. From that day onward, all of them began researching portals together. And honestly, Oscar started loving the fact that Alina visited the house every day. Sometimes after she left, Oscar would secretly dance around the room out of happiness. Meanwhile, Alina wasn't entirely comfortable with Theo returning to the past, because changing the past could completely alter the future. Maybe her children would never even be born. And Alina loved her children more than anything. But Oscar promised her something. No matter what happens, I won't let your future change. We'll find a way to keep both timelines exactly the same. Now everyone started thinking carefully. How could Theo go back without destroying the future? That's when Theo came up with an idea. He decided to ask Alina's children for help in decoding the coordinates written by his mother. Theo explained that if Alina's children traveled into the past with him, then their existence in the future would automatically stay protected. Because if they weren't born in the future, they could never travel back in time in the first place. Using maps and calculations, the three kids finally located a strange spot near a beach. Theo became convinced it was another portal. He ran toward the water and jumped in. Not wanting him to go alone, Brenda and Nathan jumped after him too. Moments later, all three kids crashed onto a rocky shore. They quickly stood up and looked around, and instantly realized something was horribly wrong. The city they came from was completely gone. Instead of buildings and roads, there were only mountains and empty land. That's when they understood. They had traveled into the past, but not to 1990. They had gone much further back, all the way to 1949. The three kids were now stranded in a completely unfamiliar world. Confused and terrified, they tried understanding what had happened. In reality, they had accidentally used the second type of portal, the unstable one, the kind that throws people randomly through time. Back in 2022, Alina suddenly realized the children were missing. She immediately called Oscar. Oscar quickly understood what had happened. I think they found the portal, and now they're trapped somewhere in the past. Oscar and Alina knew there was only one option left. They would have to go after them. Meanwhile, in 1949, the children were struggling badly. They had no money, their phones didn't work, and worst of all, they were starving. That's when Brenda and Nathan came up with a clever plan. Using their modern gadgets, they created a fake mind-reading magic show. Nathan sat far away from the crowd while secretly communicating through wireless earbuds. Meanwhile, Brenda stood before the audience pretending to read minds. Theo would write random names on a board. Nathan secretly read the names through the camera and whispered them into Brenda's ear. And to the people of 1949, it looked like real magic. The audience was stunned. Everyone started clapping and cheering loudly. Soon, the kids managed to earn some money from the performance. But unfortunately, their luck didn't last long. Police officers noticed the strange public gathering. Back then, performing without permission was illegal. The moment Theo spotted the police approaching, he whistled loudly to warn the others, and all three kids immediately ran away. But while escaping through the streets, a mysterious man suddenly grabbed them. Before they could react, they were kidnapped and taken somewhere unknown. And now, their lives were in even greater danger than before. Meanwhile, back in 2022, Oscar and Alina finally discovered the entry point to the 1990 portal. Without wasting another second, both of them held hands and jumped in together. As Alina traveled through time for the very first time, she couldn't believe what she was experiencing. It felt like a dream. Soon they arrived in 1990. Everywhere they looked, missing posters of Theo were hanging across the streets. Meanwhile, in 1949, the mysterious man who kidnapped the children brought them to a secret gang hiding deep in the wilderness. The leader of the gang looked confused. "Why did you bring these kids here?" The man replied, "Because they know our secret code." Theo looked completely confused. "What secret code?" The man explained that the whistle Theo used while escaping from the police was actually the gang's secret signal. Theo had learned that whistle from his grandmother. Suddenly, a young woman entered the room, and the moment Theo saw her, he froze. It was his grandmother, but much younger. Theo had just met his grandmother from 1949. Now everything started making sense. That's where Grandma originally learned the whistle. Theo didn't tell anyone the truth because nobody would believe him, but emotionally overwhelmed, he immediately hugged her tightly. Thankfully, this gang wasn't evil. They were rebels fighting against the government, but they mostly helped ordinary people survive difficult times. And luckily for the children, the gang had no intention of hurting them. For now, they were safe. Back in 1990, Oscar and Alina searched desperately for the children children inside Oscar's house, but suddenly, they heard someone crying nearby. Quickly, both of them hid inside a cupboard. Moments later, a younger version of Oscar entered the room. He was sitting alone, crying because Theo had disappeared. Seeing his younger self completely broken emotionally, future Oscar felt devastated. Meanwhile, in 1949, the three children slowly began adapting to life with the gang, because at this point, they believed they might never return home. And since Theo's young grandmother was there with them, Theo started feeling strangely comfortable in that time period. One day, Theo secretly asked his grandmother to take a photograph with all three kids. Then he told her something very important. No matter what happens, please keep this photo safe forever. Even when you grow old, frame it and protect it. Later in 1990, something unbelievable happened. The photograph hanging inside Grandma's house suddenly changed. Now the picture included Theo, Brenda, and Nathan standing beside young Grandma. But Theo had done something even smarter. On the back of the photograph, he secretly wrote the coordinates of the portal. That way, Oscar and Alina in the future could eventually discover the correct portal location. After figuring this out, Oscar and Alina realized they needed to return to 2022 first. Only then could they use the proper coordinates to travel safely to 1949. The plan was simple. Go back to 2022, find the correct portal, travel to 1949, rescue the children, then return everyone safely to 2022. And finally, send Theo back to 1990. So Oscar and Alina returned to 2022. Using the coordinates Theo left behind, they successfully opened a portal to 1949. Meanwhile, Theo had already informed the gang that his older brother would come looking for him. So when Oscar and Alina arrived, two gang members were already waiting there. The gang members used Grandma's special whistle as a signal. Oscar immediately responded with the same whistle. And only then were Oscar and Alina taken safely to the gang's hideout. The moment Alina saw Brenda and Nathan alive and unharmed, she almost burst into tears from relief. But then came another problem. Theo no longer wanted to leave 1949. He had started loving life there. Oscar was heartbroken hearing this. He looked at Theo emotionally and said, "Yeah, we fight a lot, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. You have no idea how much I cried after losing you. I don't want to lose my little brother again." At that exact moment, young Grandma walked into the room. Oscar stared at her silently in complete shock, but didn't say a word. Now there was only one thing left to do. Find a portal back to 2022! One of the gang members offered to drive them there, and surprisingly, that man turned out to be Theo and Oscar's grandfather. Soon they finally discovered a stable portal leading back to 2022. Everything was almost fixed now, but the hardest goodbye was still waiting ahead. After finally returning to 2022, Oscar prepared everything needed to send Theo back to 1990. They had already located the correct portal earlier at a construction site, but Theo still didn't want to leave. For the first time in his life, he felt like he truly belonged somewhere. In 1990, he had no parents. He always felt lonely. Now, after meeting the older Oscar, Theo finally felt safe. He looked at Oscar emotionally and said, "I want to stay here with you. You remind me a little of Dad." Hearing those words broke Oscar's heart. Slowly, he pulled Theo into a tight hug. Then he gently explained, "The younger version of me in 1990 is lonely too. He needs you just as much as you need him. And I promise you, if you behave yourself, my younger self will take good care of you." Theo tried holding back his tears, but deep down, he knew Oscar was right. Finally, with a heavy heart, Theo stepped toward the portal, and moments later, he disappeared back into 1990. The second Theo returned home, young Oscar became overwhelmed with happiness. He hugged Theo tightly like he would never let him go again. Even Grandma showered him with love and relief. When Grandma asked where he had been all this time, Theo simply lied and said that a gang had kidnapped him. Meanwhile, young Oscar was still emotionally confused. After everything that happened, he slowly started believing that maybe their mother had truly abandoned them. Frustrated and heartbroken, he angrily began throwing away all of their mother's research books. But this time, Theo Theo stopped him. Then Theo told Oscar everything. The portals, the future, the year 2022, meeting older Oscar, traveling to 1949, everything. And to prove he was telling the truth, Theo showed him a smartphone from the future. Oscar still struggled to fully believe the story, but after seeing the phone with his own eyes, he couldn't deny it either. After that night, both brothers made a promise. No more time travel, no more portals, no more changing timelines. From now on, they would simply live happily in the present. Meanwhile, in 2022, older Oscar was finally beginning a new chapter of his life. As he stood inside the house, the doorbell suddenly rang. Theo immediately smirked and teased him. "That's probably your girlfriend Alina." Theo then reminded Oscar of something important. "Now's the perfect time to tell her how you feel. She's divorced now, the kids are already grown up, and nothing in the timeline will change anymore." Theo admitted that he intentionally never encouraged Oscar earlier, because if Oscar and Alina had gotten together too soon, Brenda and Nathan might never have been born, and Theo had promised that he would never change their future. But now, everything was finally safe. Oscar took a deep breath, walked toward the door, and opened it. Standing outside was Alina. Both of them smiled softly at each other, and for the very first time, it truly felt like life was giving them another chance. But the story wasn't over yet. In the final scene, we are taken far back into ancient times. A mysterious portal suddenly opens, and from inside it, a woman slowly steps out. It's Theo and Oscar's mother. She had been trapped in the distant past all along. Since the people of that era knew almost nothing about science, she decided to stay there and teach them, meaning her actions could completely transform the future forever. And with that incredible twist, the story finally comes to an end. So now the real question is, do you think Theo should have convinced Oscar to confess his feelings to Alina much earlier? Maybe her divorce would never have happened, and they could have lived happily together from the beginning. Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.